listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Another episode of the Red Moon Podcast, live every single Tuesday night right here at 9 p.m. Eastern on all your favorite social media networks, as also the downloadable version, the audio downloadable version.
There's something you can listen to on someday.
Thursdays at midnight. Thank you. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside he's out again. He's cheating on us with his wife.
What?
At the beach. Yeah, Sean's not
Son
with
of the
us.
beach.
That's it. And our other host.
I said it last week. I can't say it again for another 30 years.
30 years? You said it within 30 years. Since?
Have I?
Yes.
Can you prove it?
I've got recordings.
Find it.
And
dig
none
through
of that,
it.
You just said it with him gone. You're not going to relent to that
I said it
again?
last week when he was here, just for him.
Oh, that's true.
And that's twice within 30 years. So see, now I can't say it for 60.
Is that the stipulation now?
Within 30 years?
Well, I was going to say after.
I don't know. 30 just sound. I don't know why that number popped into my head. It just sounded like a good one.
You know what would have been a better number to
26.
say? 26. That's it. Yeah, only our truest fans know 26 years.
19's
right.
a good number.
Yeah, I know. Dark Tower.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
42.
Well, that was the year Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Yeah.
Hitchhiker's Guide.
I know. But no, we got a great show. Yeah, Sean is out again. He's just, I'm telling you. I mean, is he dependable or not?
Yeah, because he's seeing a movie, so therefore
he did see.
He will be prepared.
He saw it with us.
Yeah, but I think our next review he's going to be prepared for too as well. So
yeah, I think we're gonna do it.
Yeah, you go pull the trigger.
I think I am. I'm gonna.
You
say
don't want to.
I mean, here's the thing: we're gonna cover both of these movies tonight in our main headline.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about them some
because this Memorial Day box office did not show up in the way that I think theater owners were hoping.
I don't think anybody expected this because I mean it's one thing to be down, but to be the lowest Memorial opening since '95.
That's why you said 30 years.
Yeah, it's been almost 30 years.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
that's
insane.
Horrible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Kudos to Casper though, because Casper had the number one opening of '95.
And you know, here's the thing. And
this
is
a better
not
movie.
Adjusting for inflation. Agreed. Not adjusting for inflation.
No, that's what's even more insane.
It made like $40 million or $50 million.
It's opening day, just opening day, not opening weekend. Opening day, I think it was at like 22 million. And the movies we're talking about this Memorial Weekend, Furiosa and Garfield, just raked in like they were over, I think, around 25 million for the whole weekend.
Yes,
I believe. So
the whole weekend.
Yeah, Casper made almost more its opening day than they did for the whole weekend.
Again,
almost 30 years later,
domestically.
Yeah,
but even
but
worldwide,
still, it's not.
The numbers are still grim.
The fact is that it was an abysmal Memorial Weekend for the cinema, and that's crazy because it's usually one of your busiest weekends. I
mean, we just talked about it kind of last week with Fall Guy and it now being released on digital and streaming. And not much hope now still for the rest of the summer.
I'm not going to watch it still, but I was funny because Challengers is also like the same day Fall Guy. Like literally both of those movies were only in theaters for like 2 to 3 weeks.
And I don't think Challengers...
It didn't do very well. I mean, it's gotten good reviews from critics.
I don't think box office-wise it did anything stellar at all. Zendaya didn't bring in the cash.
Was it number one the weekend it came out? It might have been, but I don't think so. Did
I don't
it come
think
out
it
the same
was.
week as Fall Guy?
I thought it came out the week of Abigail.
I don't remember.
And I thought Abigail was number one.
I have to look at Abigail was number one. I don't think it was because we've
we'll
reviewed
look that up
the last,
during the review.
I say we've reviewed the last few number one opening.
Yeah, because I remember
movies.
refusing. I refused to see Challengers.
Well, it flopped and was released digitally 2 weeks later, so it's good.
Well, look up the release date. Let's find out.
It released. Let's see. Give me the date. Let's go to IMDb.
They won't tell you.
Oh, they don't tell you the release date?
Nope.
Okay,
They
Wiki
tell
it
you the
is,
year.
I guess.
You just look up Challengers movie.
I did, and it didn't have it
Google.
on there. Like at the top of Google, it just gives you the runtime.
What? No.
Yep, right here. See, Challengers.
April 26th, 2024 release date.
It's not on mine.
I don't know why. I just searched for it on Google and it said release date.
That's
April
crazy.
26th.
That's crazy.
But see, then, let me look up. Hold on.
Was that
Abigail.
It's full, like, wide release?
Yeah, they didn't do like a limited release.
Okay.
Normally, if they're doing a limited release,
Just
it's
type
not
in
gonna be
box office for April 26th.
Yeah, do that.
April 26th.
I didn't think it would have made number one. I feel like
I
we would have
wouldn't either.
announced that.
I just was curious of how much it did actually make. Let's see.
I'm looking it up too.
Well, that day it was number one, but I don't know about the weekend.
Yeah, that's. I was gonna say. Oh, April 19th was Abigail.
Okay.
It came out
might
April
have had
19th.
number. Oh no, was that the weekend of Civil War? April 26th.
I might have. It might have.
I think
No. I thought Civil War came out before Abigail.
April 12th was Civil War. It was before
Yeah.
Abigail. And Gentlemanly Warfare was
Yeah,
after.
no. I was gonna say I think Challengers definitely edged out Ungentlemanly Warfare because even though it had Henry Cavill,
Okay, and Gentlemanly Warfare was April 19th, so that was the weekend of Abigail.
and Abigail beat it out,
Hmm.
and then I guess Challengers came out the weekend after,
Interesting.
and it might have been number one.
Interesting.
But yeah, Fall Guy was immediately the following week.
Let's see.
Because I think that's why I chose Abigail.
April 26th through the 28th, that weekend's number one was Challengers. So it had 1 week, because then the week after was Fall Guy. So basically, it had 1 week on top, fell off, and then got released digitally like 2 to 3 weeks
And
later.
Sean was mad at me because I picked Abigail over Challenger. He wasn't mad because I
He was-
picked
I mean,
that over
yeah.
Challengers. He just didn't want to watch Abigail. But nothing other than Challengers released
Yeah.
the week we did Ungentlemanly Warfare, and Abigail was the only other movie that released
Well, I
alongside
know he
it.
would disagree, but I think we saw the better movie anyways. So
Well, we reviewed both.
I'm talking about between Abigail and Challengers.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if he's watched Challengers. Did
Well,
you
I
ever-
don't know. I just meant he didn't like Abigail, whereas I did.
yeah.
So I'm fine with the fact that we saw Abigail instead of
True.
Challengers.
True. Yeah.
I don't know.
I see what you're saying. He would disagree.
Now, I don't know. Maybe he would. Like, I don't know. He might think Challengers is terrible too, and
He
they were
don't
just
care.
evil.
He's on a beach somewhere.
I know we
sipping
can't
a Mai
speak for
Tai.
him. I wish he was here.
I
He
say
can't
Mai
speak
Tai,
about
but
the movie we're going to review this week, but we
he's-
have a good one.
He's sipping on a virgin martini. Shaken, not stirred. I doubt it.
I don't. Yeah, no. That's
He
that'd
would.
be.
That's not a Sean thing.
Yeah, but
I'm
it'd be
just
very hard to
joking.
make that virgin because everything that gets mixed together is alcohol.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, can't do that.
Like it doesn't have a mixer. It's all alcohol.
It's just it's like you pour it in the cup and you're like,
you get the twist of lemon and that's it. Like
That's
the
it.
little lemon twist in there.
it's like this just tastes like really strong lemonade. It's like there's no sugar in it. It's just lemon.
It's just the lemon peel because that's it.
You get a little bit of lemon juice in there. That's all.
That's great. But we do have a review
Yeah,
this
we
week
do.
of one of the two movies that failed this weekend, Furiosa and Garfield. And our review is Furiosa.
I was gonna say, are you gonna tell them which one?
Yeah, no, they're gonna have to listen to the whole show to find out. But I did see both movies actually this weekend. I wasn't planning to originally. We saw Furiosa opening night, and then my family went to see Garfield at the drive-in, the nearest one to us, across the river there in Indiana. Had to go spend time with the Hoosiers, but it's okay.
It was worth it because drive-ins are.
It was actually really nice. It was. I mean,
We talk about the decline of theaters.
as
Drive-ins-
nice as a dying industry is, I'll say, because I mean it was nice, but obviously it's not as well kept as what I think drive-ins in their heyday would have been.
True.
Because obviously, I pretty much think any drive-in's going to struggle nowadays. So it's not like they were like run down, but you could just tell it wasn't like the top of the line, state of the art equipment. But some of that also was, I think, on purpose because they do go with the very retro vibe.
Yeah, but I'll be honest.
It's some of that, obviously to hide, I think, the fact that their equipment's outdated. but-
Exactly. Because they have way better projectors now
Yeah,
where
yeah.
it could look a lot better.
Yes.
And I hate to say it, but I'm not sure, but well, the screen is flat. It's not like a piece of tin or anything.
Well,
is it?
it's like it's like these segmented pieces. So I mean, you
Okay.
can't see like the lines, but it's not bad. Like I mean, it was fine. It's just you could tell at least where we were being so close. I think further back you probably wouldn't
couldn't.
see, but you could see the lines in the screen.
And I
down
like
it.
that they did offer. You said they offered the radio frequency.
Yeah,
You could tune into.
they have two screens. Their first original screen still has the speakers. Now the other screen doesn't. You can only use radio for that one. But the first screen, if you're viewing your movies on that one, you can use either the speaker, car side speakers, or you could just tune into the radio frequency. But I mean, it was a nice setup. They played like classic Looney Tunes cartoons before the movie, which was kind of cool. So, but I mean, yeah, it was nice. We went. They had like the little playground in front of the screen for kids to play out to the movie starts.
I totally remember that. Being younger. Oh yeah, going there for that.
And but
they have the dancing snacks. Did
they did during the intermission, like between the movies. They didn't have it before the first movie.
Did y'all actually do a double feature? Did you stay?
Well, they're always double features, but no, they didn't because the kids at that point. It was already 11:30 when Garfield went off.
Oh, what was the second one?
Ghostbusters.
Oh, really?
Yeah. One screen was If and Fall Guy, and then the other screen was Garfield and Ghostbusters.
That's not a bad mix.
No, and I was like, if this was Garfield and Fall Guy, this would be perfect for me, because then I didn't stay either, but I might have if it had been Fall Guy.
Yeah.
I did think at one point about just driving my car around the other screen, because I'm like, I already paid for two, like, you get two movies, I already paid, and people, like, a lot of people left
already
after the first
leaving.
movie.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I move from this screen to that one, does it really matter? But at that point, I was like, well, it's going to be like 2 o'clock in the morning if I stay
and you've already seen it.
Yeah, I already seen it. If I hadn't ever seen it, I would have. But I was just like, I've already seen this, and it'll be 2 in the morning before I get out of here.
But yeah, we went to go see Furiosa on opening night.
Yeah.
And I guess we should dive into it now.
I think we can.
Let everybody know what
our
thoughts were.
Let them hear it. Let them know.
Here is our review of Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
Memorial Weekend has passed, and what is normally one of the biggest weekends at the box office for cinemas, kicking off summer vacation, has seen an abysmal decline, scoring the lowest Memorial opening in nearly 2 decades. Coming in neck and neck at the box office were Furiosa and Garfield, the long in gestation and once anticipated prequel to Fury Road, one of the biggest films of 2015, and a family film based on a beloved IP. Both exactly the type of movies perfect for Memorial Weekend. The types of films that pull in mass crowds and offer something for all ages. Yet neither drew a crowd. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, centers on the character from which it draws its name, Furiosa. Played by Charlize Theron in 2015's Fury Road, but portrayed by Anya Taylor-Joy in this film, as it depicts a much younger point in Furiosa's life. Directed by George Miller, creator and director of all the Mad Max films, Furiosa showcases how Furiosa came to be who she is by the point we meet her in Fury Road. Kidnapped from her home, the place she's trying to reach in the prior film, we learn how she was taken and her rise in the Citadel. Furiosa is an action-packed spectacle done only as George Miller can do. For anyone familiar with Fury Road or any other Mad Max film, Furiosa, while not a step up from its predecessors, doesn't disappoint. While each Mad Max film before it seemed to ramp up the set pieces and push technical effects to their limits, Furiosa feels more evolutionary than revolutionary in comparison. That said, the effects are still amazing and set pieces well done. Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa is terrific, and honestly I felt more for her character than I did Charlize Theron's portrayal. I never felt wholly empathetic to Theron's Furiosa, whereas Miller's script and Taylor-Joy's performance made me much more sympathetic to the character. The film brings back villains from Fury Road, showcasing the wasteland's political structure between specific strongholds, and new character Dementis, played by Chris Hemsworth, is a highlight of the film. Hemsworth chews the scenery and delivers one of his best performances, offering a character who is both humorous and dangerous. Furiosa is a well-done, welcome addition to the Mad Max mythos. Villains are over the top, and the set pieces more so. It doesn't beat out Fury Road, a film whose effects and set pieces I felt just edge out Furiosa's. Furiosa also has a few pacing issues at its start, and while much tamer than I was expecting, the film is guilty of a few I am woman tropes. Furiosa was still highly entertaining, but audiences' mistrust of Hollywood and preconceptions of the film may have killed the movie before it ever had a chance. I give Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, 3 out of 4 stars.
Well, you can't be too disappointed in that.
I hated it!
You just ruined it.
No, it's a good movie. It's sad again, like Fall Guy, though I would say Fall Guy is a better movie. It's just sad that I think people's preconceptions of Hollywood right now and the fact that you can't trust Hollywood are hurting some of these movies. And with Furiosa, I mean, you really can't blame them because the way it's marketed, the way, the climate of Hollywood right now, and the fact that George Miller hasn't always been the most trustworthy for woke things. Like the Mad Max films have never been woke, but he did make Happy Feet. So, I mean, I'm just saying. So it's one of those things where with all the ingredients there, you're just like, are you going to ruin Mad Max now or not? And I don't think he did, but it's just one of those things where I understand people being tepid and mistrustful.
I mean, it is kind of funny because we all jokingly, before this movie came out, the marketing is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
Yeah.
And it's like, clearly this character is part of the Mad Max universe. And okay, fine, we're fine with having a story expand on who she is or what her story is.
Yeah.
But it is funny that based on the marketing of the film, it also backfired in the way that most people saw, oh, it's part of Mad Max.
Yeah.
But Mad Max isn't in it.
He's
not. He's not. I
Is
mean,
he?
no.
I didn't want to spoil anything.
You talking about the one Jack guy?
No, I'm talking about a small cameo that I guess you didn't notice.
Yeah, I totally missed
Yeah.
it. I don't care. I mean, spoil it because I didn't notice
Spoiler
it.
now. The shot of I forget exactly where. Like it's on the cliffside, and his car is there with him standing in leather, watching as Furiosa's. I think it's when she's trying to get back to the Citadel.
Oh,
and
that
was Mad Max.
No,
yeah.
I don't.
It's a cameo. That's what I said. It's a small
you don't
cameo.
even see him.
No, it's from the shot of the back.
Yeah,
that's why I was teasing. I was just
Yeah.
like, "There's a small cameo."
Mad Max is not in it.
They didn't forget him. They show that he's still out in the wasteland.
I love it.
Doing his
It's
thing.
called a Mad Max saga.
Yeah.
Saga entailing like an entire
Yeah.
mythos and world of
Well, that's
this
kind of what
character.
each Mad Max is like this lore of what I mean. Granted, this one is Furiosa, but none of them are so interconnected. Except this one's actually the most connected plot-wise
to Fury Road, yeah.
because none of them are really connected to each other than his backstory. Like each movie is him encountering like a different group or a different scenario.
And here's the thing: like, look, I'm not trying to browbeat it in the sense that that's a huge negative because
No.
I felt the same way walking out. I felt 3 out of 4 stars.
Yeah.
I liked the movie, but I understand why people are not only tepid about going to see it, but they're just turned off by the fact that it's like this has nothing to do with him.
Mm-hmm. No.
And again,
he's
I
not
even
in the plot. He's not an actual character. Like I said,
even
there's
saw
just
one female on X who was talking about how she was like, I actually would have rather have seen Charlize Theron pick up the role and it being just before. Which, granted, I understand that this movie takes place before, well before she's at that age in Fury Road.
Yeah.
However, it is funny because
I liked Anya Taylor-Joy more than her, though.
I know I
honestly.
would agree.
Yeah.
I'm not agreeing with what she said.
I'm like, if they
but I do
made a
think it's
sequel and replaced her with
interesting-
Anya Taylor-Joy, I wouldn't care. I know that would be out of continuity, but I wouldn't care.
No, I wouldn't either. I mean, like I said, I agree. I
Yeah.
prefer Anya
Oh, yeah,
Taylor-Joy in this as well over her. But I understand from an optics perspective, if somebody saw Fury Road and loved it, and then they thought of Charlize Theron as Furiosa and
Yeah.
that she embodied that, even though this is a prequel set before she becomes that version of who Furiosa is in Fury Road, I understand if it's like, okay, it's kind of like you're doing a bait and switch. It's like, okay, you're not getting Furiosa as you've already presented her, and you're not getting Mad Max in a Mad Max saga movie. I can see how most people are kind of like, all right, I'm not biting.
Yeah,
I'm not tuning
interested.
in.
I understand that, but at the same time, and granted, again, for similar reasons, because Mel Gibson was old at that point, but I mean, having already recast Mad Max and George Miller even talking about making more Mad Max movies where he might be recast again because he said he doesn't have any stories of Mad Max being older, so newer movies would obviously need
But
younger
why?
actors. So
Well, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why? I would
he
ask
doesn't
George.
want to make any stories of Mad Max as an old man. He wants them all to be, I guess, the same dang age. I don't know.
I guess. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think part of that was also them more specifically asking him about Mel Gibson ever returning, and he was just like, "Well, I don't really. There's no stories I'm interested in where he's older." He said, "I do." He talks about specifically making a movie that would be set before Fury Road again with Mad Max, and he said at that point he wouldn't know if Tom Hardy would be in the role again or not. I guess if it takes another 10 years to make like this one, I guess he wouldn't be. But I don't know.
He'll be freaking 80, like 85. Isn't he 70 now?
George Miller, yeah. Well, that's if
There's
he
no
ever makes
way.
it. So
I mean, well, and look, again, and not that I thought of this being a problem with Fury Road. Clearly, Tom Hardy stands in for Max, character as Mad Max.
No, he does a great job. He's a great,
like,
yeah.
Even though he's not the Mad Max that you're thinking of, but it's just like,
well, he's supposed to be the same exact character as Mel Gibson. It's just
it's younger.
Yeah.
Well, I guess he's younger.
No.
Is he the same Mad Max?
Yeah, he's supposed to be the same character as Mel Gibson.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, George Miller said that he's the same Mad Max as Mel Gibson's.
I think
all three of them.
that's kind of stupid.
Because
I liked Fury Road, but I didn't know that. I thought he was just kind of like, what's his name in this movie, Jack?
No, he's Mad Max.
Called Mad Max.
He's Mad Max.
But I don't know. Ultimately, because
I mean, if that was the case, then Mad Max wouldn't be in Fury Road either.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That I'm just like, it's kind of tragic that if you make a whole saga of movies called Mad Max, and Mad Max is really only in like the first 3.
No, he's in all of them, but he's a main character in all of them, but Furiosa.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and again, that's where I understand the confusion from audience members who are like, okay, how does this play into that
why do I need
universe?
to see this?
Unless they're expecting some kind of real cameo of a Mad Max character.
I think it's just one of those things where George Miller wanted to make the movie. In fact, I was reading it was originally they were trying to film it together with Fury Road, in which case Charlize Theron may have still been Furiosa, and he decided, no, I'll make Fury Road and then go back and make a Furiosa movie. Because apparently while writing Fury Road is where he also got the idea for Furiosa and wanted to do them together, but the studio wasn't going to go for all that.
See, it's weird. It's funny because, and I guess they don't really differentiate them. Like Mad Max 1 and 2, Mel Gibson's just name is Max.
Yeah.
Then in Thunderdome, he's Mad Max.
Well, they never call him Mad Max. He's just Max.
Right, but then in Fury Road, he has like a whole last name.
Oh, really?
His name is Max Rockatansky.
I don't know if that's legit. I mean, I know it's
IMDb.
Well, they can be edited too. That's what I'm saying. I don't know because they've never in film named his last name.
But that's
either,
what I'm saying.
So.
I mean, it's like I never took it that Tom Hardy was Mad Max.
Oh yeah, George Miller.
I took it as he's just a Max, like not a stand-in, but he is a Max character.
Oh no, he's supposed to be this
world.
Because his backstory, like the little flashbacks with his kids and stuff, like it's supposed to be the same.
That
character.
ties into Mad Max. I haven't seen the.
Yeah, they're all. It's all. Yeah, he's supposed to be that Max according to George Miller. It's just
Yeah, I
same
mean,
character.
I don't want to downplay or knock on it too much because I did enjoy the film.
Oh no, it has its
enjoyed
problems.
Furiosa.
It has its problems, but not terrible.
No, and I mean, to me, the biggest drawback is it was more of the same. Even with the focus on Furiosa and it being I don't want to say it's a simple revenge flick. I liked what they did even at the end, and I'm not going to spoil that. I liked how they played out what kind of tale of revenge it is and the lore they build in Furiosa's namesake.
I think they did name his last name in the very first movie because he was a police officer at the beginning of that. So I didn't mean that.
Oh, okay.
I had to look that
So what's it? Is it Rockatansky?
Yeah, it's listed as Rockatansky in the first Mad Max.
Okay, so then he's the same exact character because it's weird that IMDb only puts. Well, they put Max on 1 and 2. And then in the third one, they call it Mad Max as like his title.
That might
character.
be just how they have it credited in the movie.
It may be.
George Miller, just like if you watch the credits. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just was trying to clarify.
No, that's fine. Yeah. But I ultimately thought overall the set pieces are probably what lagged the most for me. The best part in Furiosa is the one set piece the first time they're on the Fury Road headed to not Gastown. What's the other one? Bullet Town. Or
Bullet Farm.
Bullet Farm. And when they're headed there, and I thought that whole set piece was fantastic. However, I agreed with you all when we walked out of the theater, and your all's thoughts were not that was a bad set piece, but you were kind of like, okay, that was a good midway set piece. Then you get to the end of the film, and they mention this like 40-day war in the desert.
Yeah,
and you get these little flashbacks, and you're salivating, thinking, here's where the real set piece comes into play, and it's a little disappointing because you don't get that. The biggest set piece is probably that Fury Road instance on the way to the Bullet Farm. And there's another instance a little bit later in the Bullet Farm itself. But ultimately, it didn't disappoint. I was enthralled by the action scenes and the set pieces that were there, but it didn't outdo Fury Road. And there were definitely instances in Fury Road, call it technological advances or whatnot, But I find it funny that George Miller prided himself on how many practical visual effects there are in his movies, and it seemed like there were more to full effect being done in Fury Road than there were in Furiosa, where there was a lot more green screen or digital or CGI effects.
No, I fully agree with that. It's weird because Fury Road, like the set pieces and the action in that movie are like way above and beyond the original three. But then when you get to this one, like it's just a kind of steady sidestep, and it's not that it's bad because, like you said, I mean it's well done. But I just felt like certain moments, like the visuals, like you could tell with Fury Road how everything was practical and how good it looked, and there were things in here that just didn't look that good. That stylistically, it looked like it was CGI. But yeah, to see it go like this small incline and then like a huge leap from Thunderdome to Fury Road. Because Fury Road was like nonstop set piece,
which I will say that is why I loved it.
Yeah, and I get that because none of the other movies are like that either, where it's like that massive of like this nonstop action. Closest might be Road Warrior, which is everybody's favorite. Most people are either their favorite's Road Warrior or it's Fury Road, one of the two.
Okay.
I think like the purists, the nostalgic, Mel Gibson fans are like Road Warrior.
Yeah.
Which is I mean, that is one of my favorites as well. But yeah, I like it. There's just like those little nitpicky things that just keep it from being as good as Fury Road. It's one of those movies that when you think that it's been almost 10 years since Fury Road, it's not that it's bad, but I'm just like, going from Avatar to Avatar 2, Avatar 2 was worth, I think, the 10 years. I was like, okay, you took that time and got it right.
Yeah.
This movie, it wasn't that as bad, but I'm just like, did you really need this long to make it? And granted, he has made movies in between. It's not like he went straight from Fury Road to this either, but for it to be gestating that long,
what were some of his other movies?
I think the only other one he did was that 3,000 Years of Longing, which also looked like it could. Like, I never watched it. It got good reviews.
That one at all.
It's the one with Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba where he's a genie.
Oh, yeah.
And it looked interesting. I was intrigued. I wanted to see it, but I also was afraid it might, again, go woke like some of the other things we've seen. And after seeing Furiosa and knowing that got good reviews, I may be more willing to check that one out now.
Yeah.
But that was the last one he did in 22. And then before that was Fury Road in 2015. So he's only made one movie since Fury Road.
Which is crazy, and even then, that was still a far part from Fury Road.
Yeah.
This was much closer to his last
He doesn't
film.
have a huge library of films. He kind of is.
And most of his claim to fame is Mad Max.
I mean, really, those are his only good ones, to be honest with you, in my opinion. He did write Babe, which I love. Like, I mean, that one always surprised me. It's like I knew that, I've known that for years, but it was one that always cracks me up to think that the guy that made Mad Max wrote Babe.
Yeah.
But he didn't direct it, but he wrote it, and I mean, I do love that movie.
Actually, who directed Babe? Because it's a notable name.
I think it's I
thought it was
Chris Noonan. Chris Noonan.
No, I'm thinking of who am I thinking of? I'm thinking of
he hasn't done anything.
No, he hadn't.
He made Babe and then some movie called Miss Potter in 06. And
it was I'm thinking of the fact that it was just nominated for an Academy Award and for Best Picture.
Oh, Babe was fantastic. Yeah. I mean, it's surprising that like that is all he's done. He co-wrote it with George Miller.
That'll do, Big.
And
that'll do.
I don't know. Maybe George Miller's script was just so damn good that Chris Noonan was able to. He didn't. I don't know. I'm not to take credit away from him, but he hasn't done anything else in his life. So,
but no. All in all, I would say it is a worthwhile film to see if you enjoy the spectacle that is Mad Max.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's worth it. It is a popcorn flick, like you said. It doesn't. I enjoyed it. I thought it was enthralling. There were certain parts, especially at the beginning. As far as some of the exposition goes, I didn't think. I mean, visually, it's stunning throughout.
Yeah,
I don't think it ever drops the ball there. Like you said, there's a few little nitpicky areas where you could say, okay, they're, visually, it's a little bit. The CGI, the messy CGI sticks out like a sore thumb.
Underwhelming compared to Fury Road, but not. I don't want to say underwhelming either because
visually it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take into consideration practical effects, I guess, I would say visually in terms of the amount of set pieces or how they're done.
Yeah.
Yes. But in terms of the color palette, the grading, the cinematography.
Oh, it looks like Fury Road. Other than a few, like you said, some of the nitpicky things that kind of stand out. But I mean, it looks like Fury Road. The humor, I mean, I will say that's something that's consistent among all 5 of the Mad Max or films or saga or whatever, since this is kind of an adjacent one. But I mean, it definitely still has the same like bombastic, like the villains and the humor and everything like that. I mean, I still laugh every time I think of I forget his name, Immortan Joe's sons that are introduced in this.
I know
Scrotus and Rectus, and I'm just like, that's 100% Mad Max George Miller, and it's like it's stupid. It's like, I know people are like, well, that's just childish. I'm like, but it's funny.
Well, and that's also what's kind of made these movies endearing.
Yeah,
and I think it's funny that it's like that would be my only problem with the film as a whole is it's not that it doesn't tell a decent story and the one that it sets up in the beginning to tell. I just thought that by the end of the film, I was kind of like, I didn't need it. I didn't need it as an addition to this universe.
I feel like this story is a little bit more complex than Fury Road. Fury Road was very simple as far as its plot.
Yep.
Yet I still enjoyed Fury Road better because they didn't really, even though it was more complex, they didn't really do much with this story. I mean, it was her story, but we already know what her aim is if you've seen Fury Road. And yeah, I mean, it was still a good movie, but it wasn't something that I felt like was detailed that you had to have.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, Chris Hemsworth, too, I do want to mention him before we get off here because I did think he was fantastic.
Yeah.
He is a good, like, he's someone who could chew the scenery. Like, I mean, even though I hated the Ghostbusters 2016 female version, he was like one of the only parts of that was funny. So it's one of those things where I think Chris Hemsworth is a talented actor. And when he gets a good role, I do really enjoy him. But he's also in a lot of garbage. So sometimes when I see him in something, I immediately write it off because I'm just like, are we going to get, like Chris Hemsworth from something like Furiosa, or we're going to get Chris Hemsworth from Thor: Love and Thunder? Because I don't want that Chris Hemsworth.
No, agreed. But no, overall, 3 out of 4 stars. I don't think it's kind of sad in the same sense as Fall Guy with regard to
much better movie though.
Fall Guy was much better, much more well deserved in terms of getting the box office numbers that it didn't get. And sadly, this is going to be the same way.
Yeah.
But this is one where I almost feel like you could have very easily escaped the doom that was the box office numbers if you had put Mad Max in the movie and made him a central focus.
Well, if this had been an actual sequel to Fury Road starring Mad Max, I think guaranteed it would have been much bigger.
I think so.
Yeah.
But we'll never know. We'll never know.
Unless he does end up making another one. We'll see. Before he dies.
But yes, we already kind of teased it. Next week, we're doing the opposite release of Furiosa, and that is Garfield.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
There's not a big release this weekend, so maybe one of these movies will see a second wind because, I mean...
Well, you know what? And that's what
if they get decent word of mouth, maybe they'll have a nice little pop this weekend.
And that's what we're about to talk about in our headline, so let's just roll that open. Yes, it's our top story for the evening.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
the top
movies.
one. The very top one.
That's right.
You're not going from the bottom up or the middle out this week?
Started from the bottom, now we here. Yeah, no, I'm
You like to jump around sometimes.
I do, but tonight, we already talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show.
We can get into it more.
And because we're talking about Furiosa and this leads right into it, box office disaster.
Yeah.
What the hell happened?
Well, we already talked about some with Furiosa.
But
and honestly,
Garfield, here's the thing. Last week, I remember we were all sitting around trying to figure out.
Number one. We thought it might take number one.
It's a child family film, like
which I think
animated, beloved character.
Furiosa ultimately did come number one, right? They were neck and neck for the longest time.
It barely edged out Garfield.
Okay, just barely, which is still, even of itself, crazy. And
because
Garfield's a little less easy to explain, in my opinion, just for the fact that, yeah, I mean, you still have the trepidation of films being woke. That's always, I think, going to be a thing right now in audiences' minds. But at the same time, Garfield is a well-known IP.
Well, and
that
especially
is
when it comes
family-friendly.
to animated features.
It's an animated family film of a well-established and well-known IP. And I'm very shocked that it didn't get more money.
Well, think about it. Furiosa is rated R.
Yeah.
And it's a fifth film in a saga.
And I guarantee you that is mainly the diehard George Miller fans that love Mad Max that went and saw it is what gave it, the money it has. The fact that families didn't go see Garfield Memorial Weekend, is kind of crazy.
And you could argue that it's like, oh, well, this just happened to be one of those years where it's like people were out doing stuff. They didn't want to go to the theater.
Maybe, but it's so
I don't think that
low.
holds water in the sense that you can't tell me that there weren't people who did want to go to the theater if there was something available.
Well, it said what? It was a 35% drop, somewhere around there
year
from
over year.
Last year.
Yeah.
So to think that, it's like that's really bad.
And I mean, just 2 years ago, Top Gun Maverick released.
And that was huge.
And it ended up breaking like $120 million at the box office opening weekend.
Yeah.
On Memorial Day weekend. That's huge.
So it's not like it's normal for people to not go to the theater. Because, yes, people do go camping. They go out of town. I get that. But the theater's still usually pretty busy Memorial weekend. I mean, it is the kickoff to summer. I mean, kids get out of school. You're going to have a 3-day weekend for most people.
If you are out with the family, you're like, well, one of those nights we can go see a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because I think this is a further evidence of not only the decline of the theater, but the viewership of how people choose to consume their content. Because, I mean, another one of our headlines we're going to get into here in a sec is talking about, you do have tentpole releases like Barbenheimer from last year that come out and a huge swath of people go to the theater to see it. But when most people are looking forward to just streaming at home and not worried about taking their whole family or, taking a big long trip to the theater, they want to just sit in the comfort of their own home.
Well, that's another problem when you start releasing movies like Fall Guy or Challengers 2 to 3 weeks after they've been in theaters.
It incentivizes the people that are at home.
And people see no reason to go to the movie theater if they think, oh, well, if I wait 2 weeks, I mean, heck, I mean, if it's not a movie that you have to see and it's one that you're fine seeing in the comfort of your home, which is most people, not everybody's, I would say, like cinephiles like us, where we want to see it, traditionally in the most pristine format. I wouldn't call AMC the most pristine right now, but
which, real quick side note,
Cinemark,
we went and saw Furiosa Mad Max Saga in Cinemark XD. We were all willing to pay. Well, here's the weird thing: we were all willing to pay the premium price. The main reason was, though, is because of the showtime. Yeah. We went and saw it at the showtime that was available that we could all make.
Yeah.
And I was willing to pay just because I knew, one, it was going to be way better than sitting in that AMC theater, which now for, I don't know about this past week because we didn't go to it, but for 2 weeks it didn't have the AC working.
Yeah, it's not had AC.
So,
no
again,
air conditioning.
Crapping on AMC because they just don't know how to actually invest in their infrastructure. I mean, there's potholes all over the freaking parking lot, and the AC's not working. The bathroom floors haven't been
the bathrooms are
cleaned
falling
in
apart.
years.
Their seats are falling apart.
It's abysmal.
It's
so
terrible.
The fact that we were able to make a trip to Cinemark, and again, there's been times where they haven't, like we went and saw Transformers Rise of the Beast, which terrible movie to see anyway.
We've been in there a few times.
The speakers popped a little bit, and it was a little bit too loud, but most of the movies we've gone to see, they're tremendous step up.
Yeah, seeing this in XD, my seat was vibrating, and it was great. Like, that's not a complaint. That was literally like you go to IMAX, and that's what you expect from IMAX. But when the engines are roaring, and you could feel the engine start up underneath of you because that's just the bass. I mean, it was amazing.
And can I at least kind of bring that into the topic of discussion, because if there is, granted, we paid a premium price. We paid $20 a ticket. That's steep.
That is.
Most
that's our whole AMC Stubs
subscription for a month.
For a month, yeah.
And now, granted, as one of my coworkers pointed out when he came with us, it was kind of funny. He was just like, maybe that's why. He's like, that price doesn't
I would say
cover.
that, but the majority of the opening weekend ticket price is going back to the studio. So, and granted, still part of it, absolutely.
True, but a Stubbs A-list covers a whole month.
Yeah.
So, like $20 for, this is exactly what we accused MoviePass of. Maybe it's not sustainable long term because they're...
Oh, no, I don't think so, but...
And I know Sean brought up that he went and saw Garfield at an AMC down in Florida.
Yeah, he said that AMC was terrific.
Immaculate.
Which I believe, the one we went to in Boston, yeah.
Although, like, 4 people just got stabbed there because a dude, loony, went on a rampage. But that's Boston. No offense, Neil.
I mean, society is also not as nice as it once was, sadly.
True.
I mean, I know it's not like we were there that long ago, but still, the amount of years that it has been.
Yeah. I didn't mean to deter the conversation.
No.
But no, I think that obviously, yes, theater chains have their pockets of
Yeah.
good and bad. The Louisville AMC has been a
Abysmal.
crap show for several years now, and it's inexcusable. I'll be honest with you, it's absolutely inexcusable. They don't provide good service. The theaters are absolute garbage. But even then, to pay the premium ticket price, I would do want the premium experience.
Yeah.
But also, is that a bigger question at hand for theater owners in general? If people do have the ability to watch these movies in a pristine format, now you could argue up and down, and we would argue certain movies are worth seeing on the big screen.
Yeah.
But to most, if you can pay one $20 price tag
To own the movie.
to either own the movie,
Yeah.
or sometimes I've seen this where they only release it rentable within the first week after it releases, and you still have to pay $20 to rent it. But some people are more willing to do that because $20 for 4 or 5 people in your household to watch it is still a hell of a lot cheaper than $20 per person.
And you generally have like a full 24 to 48 hours, depending on the service, to watch the movie. So
Right.
it's like you rent it and you can watch it at your leisure. But yeah, it is a huge factor when you're thinking.
How do they compete? How do theaters compete if this is what you're up against? Is people living in
that's
the comfort of their own home?
Is they kind of can't, because first of all, they don't set just the ticket prices. That was one of the things somebody was talking to the owner at the drive-in about, because they were talking about the movies, and because they say on their website you can bring in snacks if you want to, but they strongly encourage you to buy things from their concession, because it says on the website that's how we make our money. And so somebody was asking, like, one of the projector guy, I don't know if he's the owner or just the projectionist, but he was talking about, like, yeah, we don't really, like, the ticket prices are based on the production studios. Like, we don't set those just for ourselves. Like, it has to be like this amount for the studio to make whatever. It's like, we don't get any of that opening weekend, like, which we've known for a while.
Yeah,
Theaters,
we knew that.
They get, I think, like 10% opening weekend, and their percentage grows as the movie's in theaters longer. Though if you're like Fall Guy and you're only in there for 2 weeks, that theater's not making any money off of that movie. So that's part of, like, you got these high ticket prices, and then you have the high concession stands, because the theater's trying to make its money too, because they're not making much money off the tickets. But then you also have to convince people to come in and see the movie instead of staying at home. So theaters are in this horrible spot of,
well, it's like, how do the theaters compete with the comfort of somebody's own home with the technology that's available today and the pristine formats that you can get, whether streaming or whether
and I think you see
buying 4K
both
Blu-ray,
aspects.
having a surround sound system.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some people who go all out if they're also into movies, and they would much rather prefer, well, no, we'll just stay at home. We'll pop our own popcorn. We'll get a couple goodies from the Dollar Tree, and we'll sit at home with our family, and then, boom, we'll watch a movie at home.
And I think Cinemark and AMC are two great representations of both of those. As their answer to that is, you see with AMC, their answer is, well, if we can and provide something like AMC Stubs, where you pay $20 and see, that'll draw more people in, which it has. It draws people in. We go see a movie every week, but they're still, like, obviously, it's
we also
like you
do
said,
a podcast every week.
We do a podcast every week. It's not drawing every casual audience person, but it's also, again, not something that does seem like it's sustainable, because people are paying $20 a month to see movies, and AMC's still not really making money off of that. You may be getting more people in, but if you're not making any more money, then it's kind of pointless. You can fill up your whole theater, but if you're losing money because Stubs isn't sustainable, that's not going to work.
And then Cinemark,
I feel like, does try to offer the experience, which I appreciate. With, you have the reclining seats, the XD experience. They're starting to add more than just one XD screen in a theater. Used to, it'd be like IMAX, where
premium format,
where you're
only,
lucky there's just the one premium format. But now they're starting to make, like, I think every one of Cinemark theaters in Louisville has at least one XD screen, if not two. And I think Cinemark's really trying to focus in on, well, this is something you can only get at a theater, no matter how good your screen is, unless you're rich and you can just afford to put a theater into your house. But and I still don't know that it's enough, though. That's the sad thing, is because there's this cultural mindset. Unless you can get people culturally on board with wanting that experience and wanting to support the theater, people now do have the mindset of, well, I'd rather just, I can get it at home. I want it, easy access, instant access.
I think it's the exact same thing in struggle we have with, like, smartphones. I mean, everywhere you go, your people are looking down at their phone. They're distracted constantly. It's like we we talk about it all the time within society about how hard it is that, to just have a normal conversation with people because they're so focused on this device that they have in their hand that they're not even associating with the people that are around them. They can't even hold conversations because they're so detached from actual human-to-human interaction. And I think you grow that up on a macro level scale when it comes to these other instances of, it's like, why would I sit in a dark theater with a bunch of people I don't know when I could just sit at home with friends or family and watch this movie, and then somebody can pull out their phone. I mean, we've all talked about on here where there's been times where I'm binging a show or I am watching a movie, and if the movie's not that interesting, I have been guilty of this. I'll pick my phone up and I'll be scrolling through X, and I'm like, I need to stop. Like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, is our attention span so short that we can't, fully put towards that proper attention and that time span of saying, no, this is what I'm doing right now. This is the activity, and I'm going to be wholly devoted to it.
I think for a lot of people that is the case. I mean, people have been inundated with technology and instant gratification, and there's those people that they aren't able to, I think, just sit and focus on a movie for that long. And I really think it's something that I really don't think is in theater owners' hands a whole lot. It's something that I think is a model that is cultural, that Hollywood would have to be willing to change their direct distribution and say, hey, let's not put this on Disney Plus in 2 weeks. Let's not put this on HBO Max in 2 weeks. Let's wait 6 months and force people to go to the theater. Because Japan does that. Godzilla -1 was a movie my brother and nephew have been wanting to see for a long time. He kept asking me, hey, when is that going to be out? Or when can you get that? Or when's that going to be out? And I'm like, I can't until it's released. They don't release. And granted, they don't have, obviously, Japan's movies production is not like Hollywood where you have all these companies that have their own streaming services. But yeah, they still don't release a movie within 6 months of its release. It was released, I think, in last October, and it finally came out on Amazon in Japan last month. So that's a good 7 to 8 months that that you can only go to a theater while it was in theaters. And I mean, I know Hollywood's also worried about making people mad because they've already offered, especially with COVID, it's like, get the movie same day in release. Oh, well, we can't do that anymore, but we'll at least give you 30 days. Well, now we're not even doing 30 days. Fall Guys 2 weeks. And I think they fear audiences losing interest in
it's kind of funny because, again, and theater owners are partly to blame in this regard too, but going back to even the studios, I would agree. I think they have to be willing to hold out that long, but this goes back to a content issue in both terms of surplus and also in terms of quality. And I mean, look, we'll sit here and, we'll bemoan the fact that Fall Guy failed at the box office because we thought it was a great movie and we want to see it succeed. But for every time there's one Fall Guy, there's 4 or 5 other Civil Wars.
Yeah.
I'm using that as an example just because that movie was crap. But it was a big hit and people did go see it. I guess I should probably use another movie as an example that just flopped. But that was also just terrible because that's the thing is people get so used to seeing tepid movies that it is kind of like that's more akin. I mean, sadly now.
Okay, well, Argyle's a good example.
Hold on. Argyle is a good example. But you could easily say, oh, that's something I would watch on streaming.
Yeah.
That's become the equation now. That's something more akin to what I already get with my Netflix subscription. And so if people are already comparing it to what they would stream at home and it's not worth the big budget movie they're going to see, then you've done a double negative. And now when there is something that is worth seeing on the big screen or is a treat, sadly, one, you're like, oh, it's not making money. We got to get it out of there. And the theater owners are also a problem in this regard because they'll be the first ones to say, well, if it's flopping, we don't want it in our theaters because we want to put a movie that's going to succeed in there.
That's going to bring people in. Yeah.
Right. And granted, okay, great, but you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Well, what movie is bringing people in right now? None of them.
Because now you have the opposite issue is if you're not willing to hold a movie that possibly could flop or even see a second wind on the backside after several weeks of being in the theater, you also can't be mad at the studios for saying, well, crap, we put Fall Guy out and we're not making any money on it because nobody's going to the theater. We want to put it on streaming to get it out there while it's still fresh on people's minds and get the money as fast as we can. So it's kind of a double-edged sword of, one, theater owners may be willing to put and keep some of these movies even if they don't do great out of the gate,
Yeah.
they may be willing to keep them longer on the shelf if they had the promise from the studios that, hey, give it a certain amount of time, regardless of how well it does, to put it in the theaters. And you got to promise us, the studios, to say, we're not going to kick it out of the theaters if it does poorly in the first 2 weeks. Because I also, again, that goes back to the content problem. There's a surplus of content. There is, just like we're talking about the phones being distracting while I'm even consuming media, whether a TV show or a movie.
Well, there's just too many movies.
Exactly. There's way too much content on Netflix, on all these streaming services.
I would say even in theaters, and I know people might think that's crazy, but the fact is that it's hard to go a week without another major release coming right out. So movies only have about a week to earn their money before here's the next major movie, the next major
it's
franchise
weird that,
film.
And it's funny because it still fits in this paradigm to a degree, but it seemed like in the older days, there were still, it was like going to see a movie was kind of it was cheap enough and interesting enough to be like, oh yeah, there's that new movie coming. It's just something to do. Let's go see a picture show. Let's go out to the thing. And I'm not talking, when I say that
always
long
something
ago,
worth seeing out.
Right.
But it's not like it was like every Friday and a
new
movie.
Star Wars.
Yeah. Yes.
Star Wars was a pinnacle event.
Yeah.
Just like we've talked about with the Marvel, the cinematic universe.
Yep.
Throughout the Infinity Saga, those became events that you looked forward to, that you were like, okay, this is a cultural event. But for the most part, blockbusters came along every so often and were, yes, something that everybody went and saw. But if you're just looking for something to do on the weekend, and again, I get it, now your attention span is that of a gnat, and you also have tons more options out there of what you can do, whether at home or out and about on the weekend. There's so many other variables that enter the equation of what to do with your time. But it used to be that you could just say, well, this movie's showing. It sounds interesting. Like, you never saw a trailer. Maybe there was one actor in it of note that you've heard of, but you read the synopsis in the newspaper. You were like, that sounds like an interesting premise. Let's go check it out. And lo and behold, it was maybe a hidden gem that you fell in love with that you would have never given a try, but it happened to be in the theater because there was nothing else really that was on the calendar that came out.
I don't think we're too close to Hollywood too, which is something Sean I know has mentioned in the past, but before, like you just said, it's like you could read the synopsis in the paper, or you might hear, an ad on the radio or see an ad on TV, but you weren't inundated every day with everything Hollywood was doing, what every actor was doing, what every actor's dumbass opinion is.
True.
I'm just like, at a time, like, and most people didn't care. I mean, they cared about like some of this, like, oh, that's cool, and you still had the tabloid stuff, like, oh, Brad and Jennifer are breaking up and stuff like that. But it wasn't, I think, to the same extent today, where all day, every day, you could scroll through Facebook and never run out of celebrity gossip and Hollywood news and all the crap that's just schlock. And I think people they're kind of sick of Hollywood in general there too.
I would agree, but I'd also even say on the opposite side of that, for the movies that are being touted, I can't tell you, regardless of seeing a trailer at the front of a movie, and this definitely became a problem post-COVID because of the back catalog, and even now with the writer's strike and everything from last year, or in the actor's strike, with things getting pushed back, I would see the same trailer for a given movie umpteen number of times, and then you have their social campaigns where you get on there and, like you said, you're scrolling through and it's like, Furiosa's smacking me in the face, and it's like,
Rings of Power was awful.
They
pushed that thing left
It's
and right.
on the freaking packaging tape. It's terrible. And then, but the thing is you're so inundated to know. It's all about getting eyeballs and attention, and regardless, it never lives up to the hype because it's almost too much.
Well, it's
exhausting.
It's like having ADHD because everything's constantly thrown at you.
And it never lives up to it. And so I do think that's another aspect of the time that we live in, is they want it on your mind constantly. And then, of course, when it hits, sometimes there is, and I kind of want to move on to this because it was the cultural phenom of last year, which was Barbenheimer.
Yeah.
But it is insane to me that it's like, as soon as that event is over, just like Furiosa, like, yeah, I've seen ads this whole week of like, Witness in theaters now, and nonstop action. Of course, now they're really pushing it. But after this week, it'll be gone.
Well, you got to move on to the next big thing,
right?
Yeah,
and also they're not going to pay ad space for a movie that ultimately isn't doing well, because that's more money out the door than they're making.
Yeah.
So then immediately, because the payout didn't happen, it didn't occur up front out of the gate, what you were pushing, it's even more of a flop because you spent that much more to get it out there, and then it didn't receive the fanfare or the people to come and put their butts in the seats and see the movie. And then you're also on the back end now saying, well, all right, that didn't work. Let's move on to the next thing and try to recoup our losses there.
And again, I know we say this all the time, but a lot of these movies also just don't have substance. When you think about some of the biggest movies when we were growing up and back in, if you go from the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and you see, you have Star Wars, and then you got Jaws, Jurassic Park, Lord of the Rings. Like, those are blockbusters, and like they're actually focused on telling a gripping story with characters that you care about. And nowadays, just like you mentioned, like seeing, this is something I could see on streaming. I mentioned that about Planet of the Apes, and I don't mean technological wise. It's like, yes, the CGI and the motion capture is astounding, and that's going to be more money spent on that than what they would do for a streaming service. But as far as the plot and character depth went, I was watching that, and like I said, with like Prey, which was released straight to Hulu, which isn't a bad film, but it also, you can kind of understand why it's on Hulu. I was watching Planet of the Apes and thought, other than like the amount of money they put into the CGI, this is a movie that, again, I could have watched on Hulu and just thought that was fine. Like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great.
A movie we reviewed last year that I thought was perfect for that, and I was glad we reviewed it because it was a streaming movie, and I thought that was perfect for streaming, was Hush.
Yeah.
Not Hush.
Not Hush. That was good.
That was good. That was a Netflix movie. It was the one about the girl with the aliens.
No One Will Save You.
No One Will Save You.
Yeah.
And I thought that one was perfect for streaming, and it was perfect to have in that capacity for something that had a little bit of a social media, outreach, and to kind of get, drum up some success for it. And, hopefully that was a good payout for them, or worthwhile investment. But it is interesting because I'm glad you actually, and before we jump into the second headline about Netflix, because you just brought it up about substance of movies. And that goes perfectly into our third headline about Disney and one of their acclaimed directors who directed Aladdin, Little Mermaid, and Hercules, came out and said, Disney's in dire need of a course correction. They need to put the woke behind them, and they need to focus on content and story. And I actually do want to read
and the funny thing is,
because it's not that long.
No.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, because the funny thing is, though, is like he doesn't even advocate necessarily against the woke messaging. He's just saying that doesn't need to be the focus of the movie.
Right.
Because movies are supposed to have themes and messages.
So I'm going to go ahead and read this article. It says, animated filmmaker John Musker, who directed such Disney films as The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Hercules, called out the Walt Disney Company for prioritizing political messaging over story in its recent films. I think they need to do a course correction a bit in terms of putting the message secondary behind the entertainment and compelling story and engaging characters. The classic Disney films didn't start out trying to have a message. They wanted you to get involved in the characters and the story and the world, and I think that's still the heart of it. You don't have to exclude agendas, but you have to first create characters who you sympathize with and who are compelling. I do disagree with him on the agendas part, but again, he's making his point of you've made that the focal point.
Yeah,
I don't
disagree to an extent. I mean, agenda is a loose, a broad term.
Actually, you're right. I would agree. I would argue a different agenda.
Yes, I think you should have a universal moral message. When you start getting finely tuned into a specific present day agenda that is clearly political and isn't something that's obviously going to be something that is a universal. Like, obviously, civil rights is a universal issue that X-Men represents very well without having to get into the nitty-gritty of, well, this represents civil rights for women and African Americans and now LGBTQ. It's like, no. Now you're trying to turn it into something that's very clearly modern-day politics,
right,
instead of letting it stand for the broad message that you shouldn't treat people who are different from you poorly. That is a moral message everyone would agree with.
True.
Now you're getting into something that's akin, but still very different.
Go back to freaking Bambi and the Golden Rule from Thumper, and it's like if you can't treat everybody with respect, then you just
yes. And that's what I mean by like I'm not saying
I butchered the rule. I butchered it.
If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
There it is.
Yes. But it's one of those things where I'm not saying you shouldn't have any messaging in your film, but again, they should be universal themes that people can relate to.
And like I said, exactly, we would differ on what the agenda is. Yeah. And this is where, when you get into modern day politicking, certain things that used to be common sense have become political. And unfortunately, the divide has become deeper culturally. Yeah. And these are things that we are, as a culture and as a society, trying to figure out and thwart, in terms of destroying worldviews and values that used to be, again, I think something that was much more widespread. Yeah. And I think it is more of a vocal minority, especially the infestation that a lot of these people have that they have created upon, these institutions. Whether it be entertainment or even colleges and universities, they've invaded these institutions to promote their ideologies, and they've done it with the mouthpiece of some of the biggest megaphones they can find out there. Because he even went on to say that he did The Princess and the Frog, and they said it came to mixed reviews.
But I mean, people did at the time thought it was they were pushing it specifically
because of a black princess, and he said, we weren't trying to be woke, although I understand the criticism. Elsewhere in the interview, the animated filmmaker shared his thoughts on Disney's live-action remakes. He's like, companies are always like, how do we reduce risk? They like this, right? We just do it again and sell it to them different. Or they think, well, we could make it better. He specifically criticized the 2023 live-action adaptation of The Little Mermaid, saying they didn't even play up the father-daughter story, and that was at the heart of the movie. That was at the heart of the movie. And the crab, you can look at live animals in a zoo and they have more expression. He said, look with Lion King.
It was awful.
He's right.
He is. He's right. I remember seeing the trailer and like Flounder following around, and everybody was just like, what is that?
And he said that's one of the basic things about Disney and its appeal. And that's what animation does best. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, to me, you took part of the appeal of animation, especially when you're adding these human elements. I forget the actual term, what it's called. It's an actual term when you add
anthropomorphic.
When you make animals anthropomorphic, and you're adding human details to animals, like in The Lion King or Little Mermaid. When it comes to Flounder and whatnot, but you're adding the emotion there to add the humanity into the story of what it is you're telling. Yeah. And again, like he even said, and he specifically brought up the father-daughter element that underpinned The Little Mermaid. It's so telling. When you overlook those details, you're completely missing the heart and soul of what the original was there for in the first place. And when you can't put that as center story in the remake, because all you're doing is worried about, one, the amount of money you're going to make, and ultimately about being woke and diverse by putting in a black actress to play Ariel. The problem is you already have missed the mark on what the story is even about. And you're missing the mark on why even telling these stories in the first place was worthwhile and why they were hits. And this just seems to be, again, the problem across the board with regard to Hollywood is so often they are more worried about either making a buck or selling short their own, or universal messages for the sake of an ideology or what they're willing to push.
And that's exactly, I think, part of what turns people away, because when you look at something like Lord of the Rings again from Peter Jackson, you could tell that is something made by a fan of J.R.R. Tolkien and those novels. You could tell that he was passionate about it. King Kong, same thing when he made that. That was the original, was the movie that got him into loving cinema and wanting to be a filmmaker. You could tell those come from somebody who was passionate about the story and wanted to serve the story right. And then when you look at what Disney's remaking their own movies, and you can tell that there's no heart there, there's no passion there, they can say all they want.
It's a money grab.
Bob Iger could stand up on his soapbox and say, well, we're trying to honor the Disney's past and blah, blah, blah. Yes, and that's why you have the star of Snow White, the first animated feature-length film from Walt Disney or ever come out and talk about how that movie's outdated and the prince saves the princesses and we're not going to do that because those morals are antiquated. And it's like, okay, when your lead actress of the remake craps all over the original, that doesn't make people want to see it. And that's what people are seeing. They can tell they're just hollow cash grabs, or like you said, a way to force down an agenda that wasn't in the original. They're not worried about the original themes or characters or story. They're just trying to use a well-known property to sell their garbage.
No, agreed. And it's funny because this ties into the Barbenheimer incident from last year in the sense that when you look at movies that do penetrate the audiences and garner the kind of fanfare and getting people out to go see these movies, a spectacle type event, it's interesting because that becomes the question of how, if they're so few and far between and they can't become dependent on, then do you revert back to something that is dependable like streaming? I mean, even when it comes to Disney and these live action remakes, I mean, we've seen them dip in terms of their box office amounts with each iteration. But yet they just throw it on Disney Plus and they hope, it's going to be fine there. I mean,
it gives us more content to pad the streaming service with,
right? And it's our latest and greatest. And hey, and I think it's also hollow because, like you said, they always know what even in the trailers you can see the certain things that they're hinting at when they play certain musical notes, when they show certain visual things.
They try to pull at your nostalgia.
They know exactly what they're doing. But then when it comes to the overall full-on feature-length film and you watch it, it comes up and it rings hollow. Yep. It rings as a hollow 100%. Shell. Whereas when you do have something like what made Barbenheimer so special was that it was out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Nobody planned for that to be a pinnacle event. It just happened.
That's the beauty of the internet and memes and such, that the stark contrast between this pink bubbly like girls toy IP that is becoming a movie and Oppenheimer, the man who created the atomic bomb, being released the same weekend for two completely different audiences, but just that idea of those contrasting and being together, and then the internet thinking that hilarious drove people to see that event. And I know our second headline is about the Netflix CEO, who in some degrees I agree with him, and in many ways I also don't, saying that Barbenheimer would have been just as huge if it released on Netflix. Would have been as big on the internet. I think you still would have had a lot of the memes and stuff. I don't know if it would have permeated the zeitgeist in the same way.
Agreed.
And it definitely wouldn't have helped, I think, cinemas or Hollywood in the same way either. I mean, yeah, you might have drawn tons of streamers who were curious, and I think that's the case for anything, because once it's on a streaming service, even something that you may not have been that interested in, you might be like, well, I'll check this out now that it's on streaming.
And especially with regards to that event, you look at the timeline as far as how long those movies stayed at the top of the charts for the several weeks, and it kept the theaters alive last year. I mean, usually, and I hate to say this, but when Netflix puts something out, they're doing so that with anticipation and hopes that it, like you said, penetrates the cultural zeitgeist, that it becomes popular on social media.
Something like Bird Box.
Something like Squid Games. It's like something that everybody's talking about, and the clamor and the chatter is what drives people to the service and wants to be part of it. But even something like that, granted, I will say Squid Games lasted quite a while.
That one had some longevity.
It did. But a lot of times it mostly is typically reduced to like a weekend or a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden you're moving on to what's the next thing? Because
when you're at home, it's easier to fit in watching it. When it's only in theaters, it's like Barbenheimer might last several months because you got to work around your schedule.
Exactly. It still takes more effort to get up and go to the theater and set aside the time than it does to be like, oh, well, I'm reading about this. Well, I'm sitting here in my living room. I'll just turn it on right now.
It's like if you had released both those movies on Netflix the same weekend, everybody may have watched both of them the same weekend, and then after 2 to 3 weeks, it's done because everybody's at home. They've watched it.
And again, none of that relates or correlates into actual real numbers with regard to subscription versus ticket price.
Nope.
Each time when you talk about the $1.4 billion that Barbie made and the $800-900 million that Oppenheimer made, You're talking about that in terms of actual ticket sales. When it comes to subscription numbers, even if a certain uptick in your numbers, boosted your bottom line for how much they paid for in a certain subscription tier, that's still for an entire month. And if that phenomenon only lasted for that 1 month and then they drop off, you just lost that.
Yeah.
So you still have to make that up in terms of revenue in other months to come with other content. But in terms of revenue for one movie in multiple theaters, it's like that's a different kind of, that's a whole different kind of numbers game.
Well, and I also would ask to say they would have been just as big on Netflix. Then I would be like, well, then how come you haven't had anything that big? I'm not saying they haven't had cultural phenomenons. I mean, obviously, Stranger Things has been huge, but that's also a series that does, take a little bit more time to get through. But I'm like, I can't think of anything. I mean, there's been huge releases on Netflix. I'm not saying there's not, but nothing that I think has been as huge as Barbenheimer, even Bird Box and Squid Game, for as popular as they were for a time. I don't think quite. Like maybe Squid Game got close, but I mean, not in the same degree.
And it is funny because he kind of mentions. I don't want to say he concedes defeat because he doesn't. He's saying that there can be a Barbenheimer type event. I would agree with him on there.
Yeah.
But I would say, I don't think that Netflix could replicate the success that Barbenheimer had in the theaters. I don't. And I think when it comes to certain films that have been popular, it's like Netflix itself, the entity, is the cultural phenomenon. I mean, we've talked about it before on the show about if you had to give up a streaming service because, you're trimming your budget and you're trying to get rid of the fat, Sean's brought up multiple times how Netflix would be one of the last ones to go because it's been the mainstay. And
I think that is the case for most people. Yeah.
It ushered in the streaming age, and it has become kind of the de facto streaming service that most people do have. And as far as a variety of content, it has not only bolstered its namesake in terms of the originals it produces and puts on there, but like he said, he thinks the future of streaming and the popularity of Netflix is its kind of 1-2 punch with original content.
Lease, third party.
And they have their third party that is mainstream, connected to other huge studios and production houses. But I still think it's interesting that I'm like, Netflix is the brand. That's what's popular. But just like these other streaming services that we've reported on over the last several weeks, having problems getting traction. I mean, even the ones that were slow to start and kind of even stabilize, something like Max, are still willing to combine with other services because, one, they see an opportunity, but even Max has that back catalog of HBO content that really ushered in a wave of something that was premium for so many years that people thought, this is worth the extra price of admission to my normal cable subscription because of them offering this premium product. Netflix right now still holds that crown of offering something that I think people value for the money you pay. I think they've really stuck their toe in it with regard to, raising their ticket subscription prices and granted, and cracking down on the password sharing. I think yes, it's been positive so far, but such are a lot of things in business until they're not, and they end up hurting you in the long run. We'll see how that shakes out. But it's interesting because I think with Netflix, I'm more curious to see what happens because we know they've been doing this playing along with trying to get their Oscar noms and trying to get the Best Picture winner, and they want to be taken seriously in that regard. And no doubt they're a heavy hitter. I mean, we just talked about how theaters are kind of in a rough shape with regard to even what is remaining on the rest of the slate for this year of really turning the course and becoming profitable. But they still have their own problems too, because subscribers do fall off. And the problem is you are chasing that endless amount of content.
Yeah.
You're always there trying to provide the idea that there is something new to see. The difference is you've got to provide an ample amount more than what theaters have to in terms of keeping up with what people are even going to the theaters to see. And that's where I'm just like, I don't know if Netflix in the long run can sustain that and stay in the black. We know for years they've been in the red.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so it's interesting, but it's like, you're going to need more than just one Barbenheimer event.
Yeah.
You need multiple.
Well, and that's why you do get all the content that you do that's just, consume. but none of it is of substance because they just have to turn out as much as they possibly can to try to convince people this is why you need Netflix, because every week there's something new coming out. And it's like, that's fine, but nobody could sustain that and make quality every week.
Yeah. I mean, just like, and I hate to say it, but comparing back to MoviePass, it was like the idea of paying $10 a month and getting a movie, going to the theater and seeing a movie every day of the month.
Yeah.
You're like, that's insane.
There was no
we all
way.
knew it was too good to be true.
It was a good ride for a little while.
Yeah,
though.
and the well dried up, and it was just like when it dried up, it sucked. But we all knew that it wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
Netflix has been sustainable at this point, and again, it's a huge IP, no doubt. It's not something that I think is going away anytime soon.
No.
But I think they have a lot more on their hands of trying to compete with that theater experience, even with as much as people are turning to streaming. And because, again, you're in the space of trying to gather people's attention and attract it to your service individually. Mm-hmm. And how do you stand apart in the long run with all of the things that are out there trying to garner your attention? Mm. And that honestly, that's the entertainment medium across the spectrum.
They're going to have Raw next year. They'll have plenty of subscribers.
That is true. and look,
that is a smart,
and it's funny because
move.
And he brought up in that article that we linked to, it'll be in the description
below. For those that don't know, I'm speaking of wrestling, Raw, WWE, Monday Night Raw.
But
people
it's
like, Raw what? Raw meat?
People know. Yeah,
most people I would think know, but I feel like
service.
some people may not. So I just want to be clear.
But he brought up in that same article about how he's like, we don't do like breaking news. That's not the outfit that we're made for.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not. And when it comes to live content, I think that is the next way in terms of live entertainment in which Netflix is producing. I mean, whether it was live comedy specials, they're the first ones to break ground there. When it comes to that roast that they just had of Tom Brady.
Yeah, they've done a lot of live comedy, but now getting into having
live wrestling. Sporting entertainment. We know Apple's talked about doing baseball.
Well, you have Mike Tyson's boxing match. That's going to be a live event on Netflix.
And
if they pick up more boxing, because boxing is huge, because I don't think they're just going to settle with, we had one live boxing event. It's like, no, I think they're going to try to get more.
That used to be HBO was the first thing I thought of when it came to boxing.
Yeah.
You'd go online or pay-per-view.
You have to pay, And having an outlet, I mean, that's what makes Peacock great with wrestling, is that like you could still pay pay-per-view if you don't have Peacock, but it's nice if you have a Peacock subscription, you can watch their pay-per-view event. And if you had that option with like boxing or anything else on Netflix, or if I know,
I mean, they've all done it because I've seen
football's on Amazon. They have their Thursday Night Football. All the stations that own like Paramount own CBS, so you can watch CBS football on there.
Countless times.
Yeah,
streaming is the new cable.
It is.
That's all it is.
The new cable.
It's just a new way of accessing.
I don't have cable, but I can watch every sporting event I want to. So, well, actually, I have Hulu Live TV now, but that was only because Fox isn't.
But even then, you got to have certain packages to get all the games. If you want them all, because you're still confined to your region.
Yeah.
So it's like otherwise you can buy Red Zone and get all the football games.
The only way to do that is to subscribe through the NFL if you're out of the region, and I'm not doing that. No. There's other ways to watch those games.
Alrighty, guys, we're gonna move on to our final segment of the night. That is our Vices segment. Let's roll that open. I just had to get you doing that.
I know. I was doing it the whole time. Obviously, no one could see me, but I was like, maybe if I did it long. I know.
I brought it up.
I just thought maybe if I did it long enough, it would,
Yeah. I would.
I should have stopped like before it ended, and then it would have been pointless.
When is the best time to have a cigar? I
haven't done that one, so I just I mean, anytime you want one, Brandon.
That's the right answer.
No, but obviously, like for me, it is on those nice, not hot day. Like I don't want it to be cold, but like a nice, like cool, in the 70s, like it is right now here in Louisville. I don't want it to be like muggy outside because that's not fun to smoke a cigar when it's muggy. But I do like it, a little bit warmer, but in the 70s, I guess. Something like a nice fall day or summer day. I just when the weather is just very nice, when it's warm out but not like unbearable.
I was gonna say I like it
Clear
to be,
blue sky.
No humidity, nice breeze, summer day.
I can lay out in my hammock or float in the pool.
Oh, dude, in the pool.
Yeah,
the best.
It can be hotter when the pool's open, just not humid. Like if it's in the 80s but not humid, and I can just float in the pool, that's great. Yeah.
I have maintained this year after year that we've gone to the lake. But there's nothing better than it being a hot summer day. You get out on that lake, you get in an inner tube.
Yeah, you just float.
And you float around and puff
it's
on
even hotter there, like 90 degrees. But again, if there's no humidity, it's like I can float around on the water at 90 degrees smoking a cigar. That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, and I do like evenings, like in the fall around a fire. Like that's always fun.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that to you.
I think I texted you. Maybe I didn't. I'm pretty sure I did. But after going to the drive-in, like I've wanted to get one for a couple years. I've thought about it, but it's not something I needed. But after going to the drive-in, I'm like, man, I really want one now. I just want to get like one of those portable projectors that you can take outside. And I just like, man, I could just float in my pool and watch like Friday Night SmackDown or I mean a movie in the fall or something. I put a horror movie on or something. Just
yes,
and smoke a cigar. Like I mean, if I could sit out in my pool with the cigar and the bourbon, watching SmackDown on the projector, my neighbors will think I'm a nut job. But I mean,
you'd be like, come on over, join in.
I'd be like, hey, this is great, man. I mean,
pull up a chair.
But yeah, I mean, just to be able to relax.
That's what.
Anytime,
okay.
yeah.
So, because I told y'all just recently that, it's been about a month. Actually, it was like 2 months ago now because it was at the beginning of April.
Oh, yeah.
There was like the first week of April, we had this string. It was like
the first really nice weather.
Before, I mean, spring had begun, but it was typically before spring really springs, and it had not sprung yet. But this 1 week, it was like every day. It's kind of like what this week's going to be.
Yeah.
So I'm tempted.
Yeah.
But it's like 70s, clear skies, humidity's like zero, close to nothing. I mean, it just feels fantastic outside.
I'll probably have one this week because I mean I know
I had one last night.
Yeah. Well, I mean I was been busy off with Memorial Weekend, so I wasn't home or.
Oh, it was
alone.
I agree. It was the perfect way to wrap up my Memorial Day weekend.
But I mean, I gotta obviously I cut my grass this week anyways, and then I'm gonna start opening my pool this week. So I mean, I'll definitely have a cigar.
Yeah.
At some point. But yeah, I mean, it's just fantastic weather.
And that's, to me, it's like right at sunset, right when you get golden hour and you're sitting there and it's like as the sun is going down, there's just something about sitting out there with a cigar and just kind of enjoying that time of the day. And people kind of, maybe some coming in late from work, some are leaving, they have errands to run or something. The hustle and bustle kind of slows down though. And you just know your evening is winding down, and it's just that to me is what it is. It's when I need a relaxing finish to the day, and I just want to be able to just slow down, and not let the day end where I'm in a rushing pace. I mean, there's plenty of days like that where I don't have time and I got to go But sometimes every once in a while I just find that chance to say, you know what, this is a perfect evening for that, and I'm gonna do it.
Especially if I'm not doing if I'm just gonna be sitting in the house watching TV or something anyways, it's like why not sit outside where it's nice and smoke a cigar? If you really have to have some form of entertainment, I have my iPad. I don't typically watch things while I was joking about the projector, and I would totally do that with the projector. But I mean, even now, like I don't typically take like my iPad and smoke a cigar. Now I may read stuff sometimes. I have like sat outside and read and smoked a cigar.
Well, heck, that week that I was talking about in early April. I mean, like I said, this never happens. It was just I couldn't help myself. I got indulgent, but basically it was a string of. It wasn't 4 days in a row. It was Monday, and then Tuesday we had the podcast, but then Wednesday and Thursday. Oh, so it was only 3 days.
Yeah.
It was, it was because it was Sunday, Monday, not Tuesday, but Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I had a cigar every night.
Hey.
Those 4 nights I had a cigar. And I couldn't. It was just
more
because
than I think I've done in a week before. So.
Well, I mean,
other than the lake.
I was going to say, I told y'all, I don't ever smoke that much. Because here's the thing. It used to be that when my schedule allowed for it, especially on podcast night, I would join next door, with our neighbor who graciously serves us food, and I would have the chance to have a cigar. So I'd have one a week.
Yeah.
And I have not been able to enjoy that except for the off chance that I may be working a morning shift, and even then, it's like that happens once in a blue moon now, thank God.
Yeah.
But so it's very rare that I even have a chance to have a cigar. So on the off chance that I'm like, it's a beautiful night outside, and I'm lucky enough to have some in my humidor, because sometimes you just run low and I'm like, I ain't got the money for this right now.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things where that week it was coming out of winter. So you have the whole of winter where it's just either I just didn't enjoy any cigar at all, because I think the last time I had a cigar was probably when we went to that cigar lounge back in December.
Yeah. Which that's fantastic to go to too.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I love that atmosphere. But to me, I agree. It's like if I'm around a campfire where it's not freaking frigid.
Oh yeah.
And it's just kind of nice fall weather, or in a summer night where it's cool, but not brisk, but where you could sit out in shorts and that breeze hits you, but it's not hot, not cold.
Yeah.
The right temperature. I mean, that just right there is cigar weather.
I just want to go camping and smoke a cigar around the campfire.
Yeah.
Be great.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm telling you.
Good times.
Sorry,
with
just
the stogie.
we've talked about what kinds we like and different types of cigars, but I was like, I don't think we ever discussed like when you should have one.
Yeah, I know.
And also,
for us,
apart from regular occasions, I would say on celebratory events.
oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, obviously
definitely.
having a baby or something.
Yeah, celebratory events, holidays.
Yeah.
I mean, I smoked one on Derby because why wouldn't you?
There
I
you
mean,
go.
come on.
That's a great time to have one.
And I know I think like me and you don't go for them quite as often as Sean and Brian, but I mean I know like they'll do yard work with a cigar.
Yeah, I can't.
I've
told Brian, I'm like, dude, I envy you, because I'm just like I'm more out when I'm pushing this mower, even weed eating.
Yeah,
I was like, the last thing I
want a cigar in my mouth. Well,
is a cigar.
It's just one of the things where like, yeah, I can't. I'm not one of those person that'll just keep it in my mouth. And then, like, because I know you can, like, breathe out one side of your mouth, puff on the other, whatever. But if I'm doing yard work and my hands are full,
I'm not concentrating on it.
I don't want to mess with it. So.
And I've never been one of those people, too, that you've always seen in the movies where you get done with yard work and somebody's drinking, like, a crisp beer.
Now, that I will do.
I
know
that.
you do, but I do.
I can't do that.
Ice cold beer on a hot day after a bunch of work is great. I love it.
I'll take an ice cold beer on a hot day. But if you had manual labor to that, I'm like, it's the furthest thing. I don't want to be more dehydrated. Give me water.
Man, like after a hard day's work, especially a draft. I know like a guy I used to work with on Sundays, like at the restaurant that we worked at, like we would like sometimes go get a beer after work, and that was just fantastic because I mean just. You're hot and sweaty and stressed from all the stupid people, and then you just like you have a nice beer and go home. It was I don't know.
I can kind of sympathize. I can see that.
But I mean, I do even yard work. I mean, I don't do it like every week after, especially because I tend to do my yard work during the week and I don't drink much during the week.
There have been a couple times where I've like mowed the grass. I come in, get a shower, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, a beer would sound nice.
Yeah. Yeah,
it
doesn't have to be right after. I guess that's the thing, because I mean, yeah, it doesn't have to be like literally you just got done mowing the grass and you're
that's
like
what I'm
hot
saying.
and out of
I've
breath.
seen people come in and they're like, and when I say people, I mean in movies.
Yeah,
they come in, done like put the mower up and they pop a bottle, and I'm like, no.
Usually I'll drink water for like I'll put the mower up, sit down on my patio, and like chug this bottle of water for a little bit, and then I'll go get a beer. So I guess there's that. Is that I do hydrate first before I dehydrate.
Well, there you go. We just had a conversation about
beer and cigars.
Cigars and beer. Yeah. When to have them both.
Oh.
But no, and if you're getting married, definitely. There were been 2 weddings that I've been in where I've smoked cigars beforehand.
Yeah.
It was perfect. That was great. Great way to celebrate.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely something I enjoy. But I agree that if you do it too often, I think it can wear it out. And I don't like to indulge that often. So even
it's more special when you know
exactly.
If you do something every day, it becomes routine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it becomes then it is a bad habit. Then it is addicting and not good. Not good for health reasons. All righty, guys, that's gonna do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Thank you all. He had to get it in there. He just had to.
We have 2 minutes left. I figured I could get it in there.
That sounds so inappropriate. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the show this week. As always, you can like, share, subscribe on all of our favorite social media right there at the bottom of your screen. That's right, Red Moon Book on Facebook, Red Moon Tweet on X, Red Moon Pics on Instagram, and of course, search for Red Moon Productions on both YouTube and Rumble. We're live on both of those services every single week.
Yay!
And even on X, we're live on there too.
Nice.
And Facebook, we're live on there too.
Wow.
It's just all of them.
All of them.
And there's that old-fashioned way of reaching out to us. Which one is that, Keith?
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Just beautiful every time.
Every time.
It always gets me. Yep, you heard it first here. We're going to be reviewing Garfield next week, so go see that movie if you can and join in next week for our show for that review and another batch of headlines.
Or don't go see it because apparently no one else is. I don't know.
And Sean will be back here next week.
Yeah, we can give you our opinions on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may not want to see it.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't want to take your family to go see it. Who knows?
Kids will like it.
But that's the thing. You can wait.
I want to go too much. I have already seen it, but I want to save the review for next week.
That's right.
But definitely kids will like it. I'll say that. So if you want to take your kids to something, you got If and Garfield.
But yeah, we'll be back next week. The whole crew will be here. That's right. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside, no, not our normal new host.
He's gone
that
right
other
now.
guy over
He's
there.
on vacay.
Whoever that is.
I'm the person
Oh.
Edie's smelling because she wants to know when are we done now?
We're done.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.